Since the dawn of the original Godzilla, the destructive and wasteful tendencies of humanity have given rise to all sorts of insane monsters. Some might come from space or through portals to other dimensions at the bottom of the ocean, but kaiju tend to represent some sort of human oversight. Recently, it's been reported that more than 1 million tons of contaminated wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant will be dumped into the Pacific Ocean. Seems like something that might end poorly, right? So what if the Fukushima nuclear waste dump made a kaiju? Let's discuss. Right, so we should probably start with that little headline I just dropped. After a magnitude 9.0 earthquake and a huge tsunami ravaged the region back in 2011, a lot has happened. The disasters caused 3 reactors at the plant to melt down and killed over 20,000 people. A terrible tragedy for sure, but the damage doesn't end there. In order to prevent the rest of the reactors from melting down, something like 200 tons of water has been pumped in every day since. The wastewater is then stored in some gigantic tanks on site, but now they're running out of space. In order to deal with this issue, a plan has been put into place to slowly release the wastewater into the ocean over a long period of time. This plan supposedly complies with globally accepted nuclear safety standards, but has come under fire for being potentially harmful to the environment. Folks in the fishing industry are especially concerned as this could have an impact on their livelihood. Recently, some shipments of rockfish were stopped because they were found to have unsafe levels of cesium. Folks are already protesting this decision, and other governments have condemned this plan. It really does sound like the beginning of a monster movie, right? Nuclear waste being dumped somewhere and it causing terrifying mutations to the local flora and fauna? It happened at the beginning of The Host. It happened in Chud. And of course, Godzilla is a result of an ancient creature interacting with nuclear materials. So we could be staring down a real-life kaiju if this goes especially wrong. Not a great thing to be dealing with, especially while the world is still dealing with a pandemic. Sheesh. But what kind of kaiju might emerge from nuclear waste being dumped into the ocean? My first thought is that a Hedorah-type creature could emerge from the depths. Also known as the smog monster, this filthy, acid-generating beast originated from pollution. After a microscopic alien life form dines on this, it quickly grows to enormous proportions and starts attacking humanity. Its first form, not too strong, but after Godzilla takes it out, it regroups and grows more powerful. In its flying form, it can dump horrifyingly destructive acid all over the place and floods Japan with poisonous gas. It's only when the humans and Godzilla team up in a last-ditch effort that they manage to take it down, and at that point, a lot has already been lost. Rough start, but it's what we're dealing with. We could also hypothetically end up with a Destroyer type. Somehow, some ancient crustaceans at the bottom of the ocean were influenced by the Oxygen Destroyer, giving birth to a group of powerful monsters. When they came together, they formed a hateful, malice-fueled creature that actively wanted to cause as much destruction as possible. I know that the Fukushima nuclear waste isn't exactly the remnants of an oxygen destroyer, but it's the closest we as a society are gonna get for a while. So if we accidentally make this one, we're probably screwed, unfortunately. There's one Toho kaiju that I'm missing here though. It's the one that is most intrinsically linked to nuclear waste too. The king of the monsters himself, Godzilla. In the original 1954 film, it's explained that Godzilla originated from an ancient reptile coming into contact with radiation generated by American nuclear tests over the Pacific. Right down to the correct ocean, this seems like the perfect Godzilla-creating storm. We could see the emergence of an incredible creature with destructive powers beyond our wildest imaginations. Either that or a bunch of aquatic life dying off. Hopefully the folks dumping the wastewater know what they're doing. So if we do get a Godzilla-like creature rising from the ocean, what would happen next? It's fun to think that we'd end up with a similar series of events to those that take place in the Toho Godzilla universe. First, we'd have to fight off the radioactive beast, and then a bunch of different iterations of it over the years. Other kaiju would emerge, whether from outer space or through similar contamination mishaps. I'm not so sure we'd be well equipped to deal with such a series of events though. In the movies, there are a bunch of really creative, bordering on sci-fi solutions to these beasts making an appearance. Do we have real technology like that? Well, probably not, unless the government is hiding something. Actually, the government is probably hiding something, but maybe not oxygen destroyers or electrodes large enough to zap Hedorah. Hell, maybe they'd call upon the Foundation and make use of some SCPs to deal with the kaiju. If we're already dreaming up gigantic monsters, why not some other anomalies that we can cross over? I think there's a kaiju hub on the SCP Wiki already. If we want to stick to a slightly more realistic scenario though, we can look to Shin Godzilla. the more horror-centric, solution-focused iteration of the iconic kaiju flick. In Shin Godzilla, the monster emerges from the sea in an incomplete form, but still causes a whole lot of destruction before overheating. Thanks to the recovered research of a recently deceased scientist, it's discovered that this beast could very well evolve, becoming more destructive with each new change. To prevent the ultimate form of this creature from destroying everything, they put a last-ditch plan into action, knocking Godzilla over with explosions and trains and injecting him coagulant to essentially freeze it into place. At the cost of many lives, this works, and the threat is dealt with without the help of fictional technology. Mostly. So that's another scenario we might have to face down if the waste dump births a kaiju. Are you ready for that kind of craziness? Because I'm not. Hopefully nothing comes of this crazy line of thinking and the radiation-tinged water ends up causing little to no problems in the long run. Or maybe someone will come up with a less potentially harmful solution in the couple of years running up to the planned start. Mostly, I just want to avoid being crushed under a giant lizard foot. So, what do you think? Is the age of the kaiju upon us? What kind of monster will emerge from the water first? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more placid ones from What If the Necronomicon Was Real? Kevin Lane says, if it were real, then I believe the United Nations would have searched for and secured as many existing copies as they can find, lest they fall into the wrong hands. I thought the Necronomicon was a means of summoning spirits of the dead or bringing them back to life. I didn't know it was created by Howard Lovecraft. One would hope that the United Nations plan would be the case. Or maybe a bunch of responsible collectors could keep the secrets away from would-be evildoers. Selena Kyle says extra points for the Bloodborne reference. I'll take any opportunity to revisit Yarnum. And Rodon Gojira says, nobody has proof of a real Necronomicon, says the person who never traveled to the Vatican Library. Hey, if you can get your hands on a copy, I would love to see it. I just hear it's always on hold. And that's the time we have for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.